The sometimes writer, often director, and always the star of MASH, Hawkeye himself, Alan Alda.
For over 5 decades, MASH has stood as one of television's most beloved series, mixing dark comedy with raw emotion against the backdrop of war. But while the show brought millions to laughter and tears from 1972 to 1983, something else was unfolding behind the scenes. Now, at 89, Alan Alda, forever etched in our memories as Hawkeye Pierce, has broken his silence, and what he revealed has left fans reeling. Tensions, breakdowns, power struggles, and one moment that nearly ended the show altogether. This isn't the nostalgic MASH you remember. This is the truth behind the camera, finally exposed after half a century of silence. The early days and rising tensions. When MASH first started in 1972, it was supposed to be a team effort. Alan Alda, Wayne Rogers, and McLean Stevenson were meant to be equal stars, each playing important roles in the 4077th Mobile Army Surgical Hospital. The show was based on the 1970 movie and was set during the Korean War. It mixed comedy with serious moments about war and friendship. Alan Alda and his co-stars Wayne Rogers and McLean Stevenson worked well together during the first 3 seasons, but over time, tensions developed as Alda's role grew in popularity and disrupted their characters' original equal standing. What started as a happy group of actors slowly became something more complicated. In the beginning, everyone got along fine. They were all excited to be part of something new and different. The show was unlike anything else on TV at the time. It talked about serious topics like war, death, and friendship, but it did it with humor. The actors knew they were making something special. But as the show became more popular, things started to change. Alan Alda's character, Hawkeye Pierce, became a fan favorite. People loved his quick jokes, his caring nature, and his strong beliefs about right and wrong. The writers started giving him more lines and more important scenes. This didn't sit well with some of the other actors. Wayne Rogers, who played Trapper John, and McLean Stevenson, who played Colonel Blake, started to feel left out. They had signed contracts thinking they would be equal stars, but now it seemed like Alan was becoming the main character. The tension wasn't just about screen time, it was also about money and recognition. As Alan became more popular, he started getting paid more. He also began writing and directing episodes, which gave him even more control over the show. But the real problems were just beginning to surface, and they would soon lead to some major changes in the cast. The first major shakeup happened at the end of the 3rd season. McLean Stevenson, who played the lovable but bumbling Colonel Henry Blake, decided he had had enough. He felt that his character wasn't being developed properly and that Alan Alda was getting all the attention. McLean's departure was handled in a way that shocked viewers. Instead of just having his character transfer to another base, the writers decided to kill him off. In one of the most emotional episodes in TV history, Colonel Blake's plane was shot down on his way home from Korea. The news was delivered at the end of the episode, and it left viewers stunned. What many fans didn't know was that the other actors weren't told about Blake's death until they were filming the scene. The tears and shock you see on their faces were real. Alan Alda later said that this was one of the hardest moments in the show's history. Wayne Rogers was also unhappy with how things were going. He felt that his character, Trapper John, was being pushed to the side to make room for more Hawkeye stories. At the end of the 4th season, Wayne decided to leave too. Unlike McLean's character, Trapper John was just transferred away, and the audience never got to see him say goodbye to Hawkeye. The departure of these 2 major characters could have killed the show. But instead, It gave Alan, Alda, and the writers a chance to bring in new people and tell new stories. Mike Farrell joined as B.J. Honeycutter, Hawkeye's new best friend and roommate. Harry Morgan came in as the new commanding officer, Colonel Potter. These changes actually made the show better in many ways. The new characters brought fresh energy and different types of humor. But they also meant that Alan Alda was now clearly the star of the show. However, not everyone was happy with these changes, and some cast members continued to have problems with Alan's growing influence. The Gary Berghoff situation. One of the most difficult relationships on the MASH set was between Alan Alda and Gary Berghoff, who played the innocent and lovable Radar O'Reilly. Gary Berghoff also revealed that he was going through a divorce at the time, and having to balance his personal life with his hectic work schedule was stressful. But he also had his issues with different cast members. They felt he was difficult to work with and wasn't easy to get along with. Gary was one of the few actors who had been in both the original MASH movie and the TV show. This gave him a special connection to the character and the story. But as the show went on, Gary became more and more difficult to work with. The problems weren't just about personality clashes. Gary was going through a messy divorce during the show's run, which made him stressed and sometimes angry on set. He would often show up late or not know his lines. This frustrated the other actors, especially Alan, who was known for being very professional and prepared. Gary also felt that his character wasn't being treated with respect. Radar was supposed to be an important part of the show, but as time went on, he seemed to get fewer important scenes. Gary thought this was because Alan and the writers were focusing too much on the doctors and not enough on the other characters. The tension between Alan and Gary got so bad that they could barely be in the same room together. Other cast members noticed the problem and tried to help, but nothing seemed to work. Gary would often complain about Alan behind his back, saying that he was too controlling and that he didn't care about anyone else's ideas. Things came to a head during the 7th season. Gary was becoming more and more unhappy, and it showed in his work. The other actors and the crew were getting tired of his behavior. Finally, Gary decided to leave the show. His character, Radar, was written out in a touching episode where he had to go home to take care of his family farm. The departure of Gary Berghoff was a relief for many people on the set, but it also showed how difficult it could be to work with Alan Alda when creative differences arose. As MASH continued, Alan Alda became more than just an actor on the show. He started writing episodes, directing them, and having a say in major creative decisions. This was unusual for a TV actor at the time, but Alan's intelligence and passion for the show impressed the producers. Alan wrote some of the show's most memorable episodes. He had strong feelings about what the show should be about and how it should handle serious topics like war, death, and friendship. He wanted MASH to be more than just a comedy. He wanted it to make people think about important issues. This creative control sometimes put Alan at odds with other cast members and writers. Some people felt that he was trying to turn the show into the Alan Alda Show, instead of keeping it as an ensemble piece. They worried that his serious approach was taking away from the fun and humor that made MASH special. One famous example of this tension happened during the episode Preventative Medicine. In episode 22 of season 7, Farrell and Alda had a disagreement about their character's decision in the script, leading to tension behind the scenes. The episode was about a colonel who kept sending his men into dangerous situations that got them killed or wounded. Hawkeye and BJ had to decide whether to perform unnecessary surgery on the colonel to keep him out of action and save his men's lives. Mike Farrell, who played BJ, didn't think his character would go along with this plan. Yes, after the table reading, Mike balked at having BJ go along with this operation, but there was no tension whatsoever. He and Alan debated the point for a couple of minutes, and right there we all decided that this debate would be great for the script. Preventative medicine offers what could have been a big fight between the actors actually turned into something positive. They decided to use their real disagreement as part of the story. The episode showed Hawkeye and BJ arguing about what was right and wrong, just like Alan and Mike had done in real life. This shows how Alan had learned to handle creative differences better as the show went on. Instead of just imposing his will on everyone, he learned to listen to other people's ideas and find ways to make them work for the show. But Alan's influence wasn't always seen in a positive light by everyone, and some cast members struggled with the changes it brought to the show's dynamic. The family connections. One of the most interesting aspects of Alan Alda's time on MASH was how he brought his own family into the show. Alan Alda has made no secret that he had a sometimes tense relationship with his father, with the two having an odd rivalry. Alda wrote and directed Lend a Hand as a way to work with his father again, and it was Robert's idea to have the two surgeons literally work hand in hand during the episode. Alan's father, Robert Alda, was also an actor. He had been famous in the 1940s and 1950s, but by the time MASH was on the air, his career had slowed down. Alan and his father had a complicated relationship. They loved each other, but they also competed with each other professionally. The episode was emotional for both men. They had to work together professionally while dealing with their personal issues. It was successful both as television and as family therapy. Robert Alda gave a wonderful performance, and the episode became one of the most touching in the series. Alan also brought other family members into the show. His wife, Arlene, appeared in several episodes, usually playing nurses or other small roles. His children also had small parts from time to time. This was Alan's way of sharing his success with his family and keeping them close while he was working long hours on the show. Some cast members and crew members weren't always happy about Alan bringing his family to work. They felt it showed favoritism and that it wasn't professional. But most people understood that Alan was trying to balance his work life with his family life, which wasn't easy when you're working on a hit TV show. The family connections added another layer to the complex dynamics on the MASH set. Despite all the tensions and problems, Alan Alda did form some real and lasting friendships during his time on MASH. The strongest of these was with Mike Farrell, who joined the show in the 4th season as BJ Honeycutt. Mike and Alan had similar personalities and similar views about life and politics. They both cared deeply about social issues and wanted to use their fame to make the world a better place. This shared commitment to making a difference brought them together both on and off the screen. Their friendship wasn't always easy. They had different ideas about how their characters should act and what the show should be about, but they learned to respect each other's opinions and to work together to create something better than either of them could have made alone. This friendship lasted long after MASH ended. Mike and Alan continued to work together on various projects and remained close friends. In recent years, they've appeared together at MASH reunions and conventions, showing that their bond is still strong. Alan also had good relationships with several other cast members. Loretta Sweet, who played Major Houlihan, was always professional and supportive. Jamie Farr, who played Klinger, brought humor and lightness to the set, even during difficult times. William Christopher, who played Father Mulcahy, was kind and gentle with everyone. The friendships Alan made on MASH became some of the most important relationships in his life. When the show ended in 1983, after 11 seasons and 251 episodes, these people weren't just co-workers anymore. They were family. These lasting relationships would prove to be especially important as Alan faced new challenges in his personal life. Life after MASH. When MASH ended in 1983, Alan Alda could have just retired and lived off his success. The show had made him rich and famous, and he had offers to do other TV shows and movies. But Alan wasn't ready to stop working. He had more stories to tell and more characters to play. Alan went on to have a successful career in movies and theater. He wrote and directed several films, including The Four Seasons and Sweet Liberty. He also continued to act in other people's movies, often playing smart, funny characters who weren't too different from Hawkeye Pierce. But Alan never forgot about MASH or the people he worked with on the show. He stayed in touch with many of his former cast members and was always willing to talk about the show in interviews. He understood that MASH was the most important thing he had ever done, and he was proud of it. In the years after the show ended, Alan began to open up more about what it had really been like to work on MASH. He talked about the pressures of being the star of a hit show, the difficulties of working with some of his co-stars, and the creative challenges of keeping the show fresh and interesting for 11 years. Alan also began to talk about how the show had changed his life. Before MASH, he had been just another actor trying to make it in Hollywood. The show had made him a star, but it had also given him a platform to talk about issues he cared about, like peace, social justice, and the importance of treating people with kindness and respect. In 2018, Alan Alda shocked his fans by announcing that he had been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. He had actually been living with the condition for 3 years before he decided to go public with it. The diagnosis came as a surprise to many people because Alan had always seemed so healthy and energetic. In addition to detailing his journey with polio as a child, Alda explained how acting out his dreams helped him realize he had Parkinson's and how he's coping with the diagnosis by staying active. Alan discovered he had Parkinson's in an unusual way. He had been having vivid dreams where he would act out what was happening in the dream. His wife, Arlene, noticed that he was moving around a lot in his sleep, sometimes even throwing punches or trying to run. When Alan read an article about how this could be an early sign of Parkinson's, he decided to get tested. The diagnosis was scary, but Alan decided to face it head-on. He started exercising more, eating better, and working with doctors to manage his symptoms. He also decided to be open about his condition, hoping that his honesty would help other people who were dealing with similar health problems. Living with Parkinson's has been challenging for Alan. Simple tasks that he used to do without thinking, like tying his shoes or writing his name, have become difficult. But he has approached this challenge the same way he approached everything else in his life, with intelligence, humor, and determination. Alan has become an advocate for Parkinson's research and awareness. He talks openly about his condition in interviews and has worked to raise money for research into better treatments and hopefully a cure. He wants people to know that a Parkinson's diagnosis doesn't mean your life is over. Even as he deals with this serious health condition, Alan continues to reflect on his career and share new insights about his time on MASH. Recent revelations and reflections. In recent years, Alan has participated in several MASH reunion specials and interviews where he has shared new stories about his time on the show. In April 2024, Joy Behar shared an update on longtime friend Alan's battle with Parkinson's, revealing that they still go out to dinner all the time. At 89 years old, Alan is still sharp and funny. He continues to work when he can, and he's still willing to talk about MASH with fans and reporters. In recent interviews, he has been more honest than ever about the challenges of making the show and working with his co-stars. One of the most interesting things Alan has revealed is how much he learned about leadership during his time on MASH. As the star of the show, he had to figure out how to work with many different personalities and egos. Some of his co-stars were easy to work with, while others were more difficult. He had to learn when to be firm and when to be flexible. Alan has also talked about how the show changed his views on war and conflict. MASH was set during the Korean War, but it was really about the Vietnam War, which was going on when the show was being made. Alan and the other people who made the show were trying to say something important about the cost of war and the value of human life. Alda recruited actor and Marine Corps veteran Mike Farrell to read the scene with him for the podcast. The first time the two men had interacted as their iconic characters in 4 decades. One of the most touching recent developments has been Alan's continued friendship with Mike Farrell. The two men recently worked together on a project where they performed a new MASH scene written by artificial intelligence. It was the first time they had played their characters in over 40 years, and it showed that their friendship and their love for the show are still strong. Alan has also been honest about his regrets. He wishes he had been more patient with some of his co-stars, especially Gary Berghoff. He understands now that Gary was dealing with personal problems that made it hard for him to do his job. Alan wishes he had been more understanding and helpful instead of just getting frustrated. These reflections show how much Alan has grown and changed since his MASH days, and they reveal the wisdom that comes with age and experience. Looking back on his career, Alan Alda knows that he will always be remembered first and foremost as Hawkeye Pierce. Some actors might be frustrated by being so closely associated with one character, but Alan has always embraced it. He's proud of Hawkeye and proud of what MASH accomplished. The character of Hawkeye Pierce was special because he combined humor with serious moral convictions. He was funny, but he also cared deeply about doing the right thing. He stood up for what he believed in, even when it was difficult or unpopular. These are qualities that Alan Alda shares with his most famous character. MASH was more than just entertainment. It was a show that made people think about important issues like war, friendship, loyalty, and what it means to be a good person. The show won numerous awards, including multiple Emmy Awards and a Peabody Award for Excellence in Broadcasting. The final episode of MASH, which aired on February 28, 1983, was watched by over 105 million people. It was the most watched television episode in American history at the time, a record that stood for many years. The episode was both funny and sad, showing the characters saying goodbye to each other and to the war that had brought them together. Alan has said that playing Hawkeye Pierce taught him a lot about himself and about life. The character's commitment to helping others and standing up for what's right influenced Alan's own behavior off the screen. He became more involved in political and social causes, using his fame to try to make the world a better place. The lessons Alan learned from playing Hawkeye have also helped him deal with his Parkinson's diagnosis. Like his character, Alan has faced this challenge with humor, courage, and determination. He has refused to let the disease define him or limit what he can do. As Alan continues to age and deal with health challenges, his legacy becomes clearer and more important. The truth about working with Alan Alda. After decades of rumors and speculation, the truth about working with Alan Alda on the MASH set is more complex than most fans realized. Yes, he could be demanding and controlling at times. Yes, some of his co-stars found him difficult to work with, but he was also passionate about making the best show possible and committed to treating serious subjects with the respect they deserved. The cast members who got along well with Alan describe him as intelligent, funny, and deeply committed to his craft. He was always prepared, always professional, and always willing to help other actors do their best work. He pushed everyone to be better, which sometimes created tension, but also resulted in better television. The cast members who had problems with Alan often struggled with his perfectionism and his strong opinions about how things should be done. Some felt that he was too controlling and didn't listen to other people's ideas. Others resented the fact that he became the clear star of the show when it was supposed to be an ensemble piece. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. Alan Alda was a human being with strengths and weaknesses, just like everyone else. He was trying to balance his role as an actor with his growing responsibilities as a writer, director, and de facto leader of the show. Sometimes he handled these challenges well, and sometimes he didn't. What's clear is that Alan cared deeply about MASH and everyone who worked on it. Even when he had conflicts with his co-stars, it was usually because he wanted the show to be as good as it could be. He understood that millions of people were watching and that the show had the power to influence how people thought about important issues. The people who worked with Alan on MASH remember him as someone who was passionate, intelligent, and committed to excellence. He wasn't always easy to work with, but he was always trying to do the right thing. And in the end, that's what mattered most. Alan Alda's candid revelations about his time on MASH show us a side of television stardom we rarely see. A side where real people face real struggles behind the laughter and applause. His story reveals the complex reality of what it means to carry the weight of a beloved show on your shoulders while trying to maintain your humanity and relationships with those around you. It makes us wonder how much of themselves actors can truly keep while living under the intense pressure of network television and millions of viewers' expectations. The dynamics that played out on the MASH set weren't just about creative differences or personality clashes. They were about the fundamental challenge of balancing individual artistic vision with collaborative storytelling. Alan's growing influence on the show created a ripple effect that touched every aspect of production, from script decisions to cast dynamics. Some embraced this evolution, like Mike Farrell, who found in Alan a kindred spirit and creative partner. Others, like Gary Berghoff and the departed Wayne Rogers and McLean Stevenson, struggled with feeling overshadowed or undervalued in what had originally been conceived as an ensemble piece. What's particularly striking about Alan's reflections is his willingness to acknowledge his own shortcomings and the mistakes he made along the way. His regret about not being more understanding with Gary Berghoff during his personal struggles shows a level of self-awareness and growth that's refreshing in an industry often characterized by ego and self-justification. It speaks to the maturity that comes with age and the perspective that serious illness can bring. His Parkinson's diagnosis has clearly given him a different lens through which to view his past relationships and choices. The pressure of being the face of such a culturally significant show must have been enormous. MASH was commentary on war, morality, and the human condition during one of America's most turbulent periods. Alan understood this responsibility and embraced it, but that commitment came at a cost. His perfectionism and strong convictions, while ultimately serving the show's greater purpose, sometimes alienated those who just wanted to do their jobs without the weight of social significance. The lasting friendships that emerged from the MASH experience, particularly with Mike Farrell, demonstrate that genuine connections were possible, even amid the pressures and conflicts. Their recent collaboration, performing new MASH dialogue after 4 decades, suggests that the bonds forged in that fictional Korean War hospital transcended the temporary tensions of the production years. It's a reminder that sometimes the most meaningful relationships are those that can weather professional storms and emerge stronger. Alan's decision to be open about his Parkinson's diagnosis reflects the same honesty and vulnerability he's now bringing to his reflections on MASH. Just as Hawkeye Pierce never shied away from difficult conversations about war and morality, Alda refuses to hide from the realities of aging and illness. His advocacy for Parkinson's research and his frank discussions about living with the disease show that he's still using his platform to address serious issues, just as he did during his MASH years. What emerges from these revelations is a portrait of an artist who was perhaps too serious, too committed, and too aware of his influence for his own good, or for the comfort of those around him. But it's also the portrait of someone who understood that television could be more than just entertainment, that it could be a force for reflection and social commentary. Alda has lived long enough to see his work on MASH appreciated by multiple generations of fans. His honest reflections about the challenges and conflicts on the set have given us a more complete picture of what it was really like to make one of television's greatest shows. Despite the tensions and difficulties, MASH remains a masterpiece of television, and Alda's performance as Hawkeye Pierce continues to inspire and entertain people around the world. Do you believe his demanding approach was justified by the show's ultimate impact and quality? Or do you think there might have been a better way to achieve the same artistic goals? Share your thoughts in the comments below.